Shot through the heart, and you're too late, darling. You give love a bad name.
Hey Woody, Jesse, we were wondering, do you know about this PIXAR thing?
Yeah, we just saw it right on the board, and do you know what it means?
Well, of course we do. PIXAR is an animation studio owned by Disney. In other words, PIXAR is what's created us.
Yeah, duh, but you know what's PIXAR's story? What makes it so special?
Well, now that's a good question, and makes for a pretty good story too, right, Jesse?
Yes. First of all, let's introduce us. I'm Boo, the girl from Monsters Inc.
I'm Remy, the chef of Ratatouille.
I'm Jessie, the cowgirl from Toy Story 2.
I'm Woody, the sheriff from Toy Story.
In order to tell this story, we first must go long way back. Long before PIXAR was in the plans of existence. Long before Nintendo's, Blackberries, PlayStation, hell, long before satellite TV was invented.
To 1928.
That's when Walt Disney made its first short film to have its
It was the first film to have its soundtrack, music, and sounds inserted after production. Now let's take a look at it, shall we? Then, in 1937, we met her.
Snow White was the first fully animated and colorful film, but that was just the beginning. Over the 60 years, thousands of kids would meet different characters that would transport them to places full of magic. To magical places, from dangerous kingdoms with evil stepmothers, to strangest places under the sea.
Kids from all ages would cry and laugh with these characters, following them through their adventures whether they be in Africa or in ancient Greece.
But while all of that was happening, something else was growing.
Something that would change movies and Disney forever.
It was 1984 when John Lasseter, until then a Disney animator, decided to join a small company owned by Mr. George Lucas called the Graphics Group. That company, which was pretty small by then, would be bought in 1986 by Steve Jobs. I think he owns a fruit company or something, and he turned it into PIXAR.
But still, it was a long road for that small company to get to what it is today. That's right. Until then, only 44 people worked at PIXAR, which was known as mostly a small animation firm, with a few short films. It isn't until 1989 that they actually started creating commercials for important brands like Tropicana.
In 1991, Disney and PIXAR set a deal for the first time.
This deal calls for Disney and PIXAR to team up to produce, create, and distribute up to three feature films. It's the first time that Disney looks into alternative ways of animation. In 1995, things really come together for PIXAR. First of all, comes the release of the first fully animated film, Toy Story. One would think that having the highest grossing film of 1995 would be enough for PIXAR.
Toy Story went to make over $360 million worldwide.
Yes, Woody, that's very impressive. But that wasn't the highlight of the year for PIXAR. No, the highlight of the year was when PIXAR decided to go public. In its first public offering, PIXAR raised over $140 million. beating out Netscape as the largest IPO of the year.
Haha, they couldn't beat us.
Yes.
1996 was a slow year for Pixar. All they did that year was win 9 awards for Toy Story.
This Oscar was given for the creation of the first fully animated feature story. And 7 FIFA Hollywood Awards, including Best Effective.
This was only the beginning of a number of awards for Toy Story. We'd tell you about all of them, but we only have 15 minutes, so...
Jumping ahead to 1997.
This was a big one for the folks over at Pixar. Not only did they sign a new contract with Disney that replaced the old one, they also made groundbreaking developments for animation.
This new technology allowed Pixar to make texture much more vivid as well as close-up characters. This technology, I guess, it was used for the first time in their game, wasn't it? Yes.
Yes.
Disney's and Pixar relationship was going as well as ever. The deal was very lucrative for both sides, and over the next 7 years, they created movies like
A Bug's Life,
Toy Story 2,
Monsters, Inc.,
Finding Nemo.
and Incredible. But then the unthinkable happened. Pixar and Disney had a fallout after some contractual problems, and they decided to break relations.
We thought we would never see them again. Disney actually went ahead and started pre-production of Toy Story 3. The honeymoon seemed to be over.
Well, just how badly they wanted this one.
It bought $7.4 billion worth of stock. It bought Pixar over.
And it wasn't a bad deal for Pixar, eh?
Thanks to this deal, Steve Jobs became the biggest shareholder of Disney, and he now owns 7% of total stock.
And not only that, but remember this guy? Well, he's now the Chief Creative Officer for Disney and for Pixar.
Once the team was back together, we have seen films like
Cars, Ratatouille,
Wally?
Up.
and this year Pixar will present its second sequel to an original film with Cars 2, when next year we will see 2 new productions, Brave and the first Pixar prequel, Monsters University.
And now that you know that, it's time to take you behind the scenes.
It all starts with an employee having an idea. Then he pitches it to the rest of the team members and tries to sell it as if it was a product.
Once that idea is accepted, the main story is written.
John Lasseter has always said the idea must be in line with Pixar's values, which usually means a character discovering how lucky he is with the help of his friends.
Once the text is written, we go in with the really hard stuff, so try and stick here with us. First, the storyboards are drawn. This is basically a comic of the movie.
Then, voiceovers are recorded. This allows the animators to give the characters proper body language with each sentence, which is easier and has better results than if it was done the other way around.
Once that is done with the recording stars, these are basic video sequences, just to make sure the story is being properly developed.
Once that is done, with the art department starts to create the look and feel of things. This is not the final product, and it is actually very, very far away from it.
That's right, because once that is done, with the models are properly articulated by using avars. This is quite a complex process, since they must first be sculpted by hand, then scanned in 3D, and then modeled in the computer, where the avars are created.
Avars, by the way, are like digital muscles. Just to give you a rough idea, there are over 100 avars in Woody's face alone.
Once the characters can move properly, that's when the sets are decorated and dressed.
And just then does a formal movie recording begin. First, with basic layout of the scenes. Here, only the most important aspect of each scene will be captured.
And that's when the real fun begins for the animators over at PIXAR. This is when they start moving the characters around like if they were puppets and developing each scene, taking in the previous step as a starting or finishing point.
Once all the shots have been recorded, the visual department makes sure everything is done in a realistic way. First, they shade the characters.
Then, by making sure the lighting is properly used in each scene.
Then finally, after all this is done, all these short clips get merged together to make the film.
This is done via PIXAR's render farm and is probably the longest single step in the making of a movie.
Finally, after all this is done, final touches are added to the film, such as music, corrections, and all this stuff.
Just so you know, an image that could be as short as 1 second, too short even for your brain to realize that it's there, can take animators up to 6 hours to do.
Before finishing this short film, which we hope hasn't been too boring for you guys, we have to tell you another aspect of PIXAR that makes it unique.
Their short films.
The first short film was a Flux in the Lamp, which was done with intention to practice making models and animating them.
And that's the same reason why PIXAR continues doing short films, for research and development.
And that's what PIXAR is all about. Making what seems impossible possible.
You got a friend in me.